This free program is paid for by the listener members of KPFK. If you're not already a member, consider joining with us and keep free speech alive.
I'm Scott Horton from Antiwar.com. Scott has increasingly been a part of our KPFK family, and I, as program director, am committed to finding Scott a permanent and fine location on our programming grid, as I very strongly believe he is really one of the great contemporary American radio journalists. I'm Alan Minsky, KPFK Interim Program Director, and I'm joined right now by Scott Horton of Antiwar.com. Welcome to KPFK, Scott.
Thank you, Alan. Appreciate it.
And I believe in a couple moments we're going to be joined by Rick Margolis. Is that correct?
Eric Margolis, yes. Author of American Raj.
American Raj. And you will be talking with him about the elections in Afghanistan and some of the aftermath of the tragic floods in Pakistan.
And what it means for the future of the American empire's occupation of Afghanistan and routine ritual, I guess you could say, bombings of Pakistan, which have continued throughout all the floods and everything else.
And I believe we have Eric Margolis in right now, and let's let Scott Horton of Antiwar.com Radio take it away.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Alan. I am Scott Horton from Antiwar.com. And I'm a big fan of Eric Margolis. He's one of the best reporters in the world, as far as I can tell. He's the author of War at the Top of the World and American Raj, Liberation or Domination. You can find his website at ericmargolis.com, spelled like Margolis. And you can also find his archive at lourockwald.com as well. Welcome to the show, Eric. How are you doing?
Hello, Scott. Good to be back with you.
Well, I'm very happy to have you here, sir. And, I actually took a couple of days, I think for the first time in 6 years or something, without looking at the news. And then I came back and I went to review it, and I saw they had the Afghan election went as scheduled, although I'm not so sure it went as planned. What can you tell us about it?
Well, Scott, I'm not sure you missed very much. And the election was another effort by Washington to add some kind of apparent legitimacy to the Karzai government. But as feared even by many in Washington, the exercise turned out to be another fiasco. According to foreign vote watchers, reported all kinds of frauds and bad behavior. The Taliban staged some attacks, frightened a lot of voters away. There were charges of corruption and fraud and miscounting. In other words, a big waste of time and money, and it proved absolutely nothing. In fact, it wasn't even a real election to begin with, because it didn't include Taliban or its allies, who represent over half of the population of Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm. Well, now I saw where Jason Ditz, our news editor at Antiwar.com, had written about the turnout and how, for some reason, I guess they'd done a poll last week, or the week before last, predicting that there was going to be the 70% turnout rate. And then they said, well, it was a disappointing 40. And Jason said, yeah, right, try 10 or less. And, of course, there were, as you said, reports of ballot boxes being stuffed and things like that, other irregularities like that. But I wonder whether the breakdown in who really had a chance to vote or not was along the same sort of ethnic lines that we've seen, really, the old Civil War, the 30-year Civil War between the Northern Alliance and the Mujahideen, the Pashtun tribesmen.
God, you're so right. You should be talking to them in Washington. You're one of the few people who really understands what's going on there. Yes, it is the ethnic divide between the major ethnic groups, and the minorities vote for back the government in the United States, and the majority, Pashtuns, are opposed.
Well, and so what does that mean then for the future of the counterinsurgency campaign if the majority is excluded? They're trying to build a government in Kabul, aren't they?
Well, they're trying to, but the government only represents its own interests and not the wider interests of the Afghan people. If there is an Afghan people left anymore, I'm not sure about that. The major problem that the U.S. government is having or the military, is that it cannot cobble together an effective or loyal Afghan army. In fact, the Soviets did a much better job when they had their own Afghan communist puppet army, as we used to call it. Now, the Afghan army is made up of largely mercenaries who come from the Uzbek, Tajik, and Hazara minorities, who are blood enemies of the majority Pashtun. And so whenever the army comes into the southern Afghanistan, Pashtun territory, they're the enemies, and they fight, and they're not getting any Pashtun members. The officers and the intelligence service are drawn from the Tajik Mafia, the sort of Northern Alliance, which is dominated by the old Afghan Communist Party and the drug-dealing warlords. So it's a really messy, lousy situation. It will never be legitimate, constituted like this.
Mm-hmm. Well, even if the Americans weren't involved, was there ever really a kind of Afghan patriotism or Afghan nationalism in this country, or is it even really a country? Is it just lines on a map drawn by some British imperialist generations ago?
Well, there was a certain Afghan national sense and national identity, even though there's strong centrifugal forces in the country that pull it towards its neighboring countries. But there was some pride. And Afghanistan seemed to creak along under the old regime with a king in Kabul who really didn't control much or do much, and just everybody was left alone to do their own thing. But at least they were Afghans, because it's a question of what they were not. They didn't want to be Pakistanis, they didn't want to be Tajiks or Uzbeks or Indians for sure. So there was a sort of pride, but now it's broken down. And when the Soviets were there, the KGB, I saw this firsthand, had special units designed to stir up ethnic unrest and hatreds, launching attacks against different ethnic groups, blaming it on the other. They created ethnic conflict, and it continues to this day. It's not the sole fault of the Soviets, but they played an important role.
Mm-hmm. Well, something that's always puzzling to me is that Hamid Karzai, which after all he is just an individual, but they say that he's a Pashtun tribesman, maybe more of a city type than a town and country boy or something like most of the resistance. But why is it that he is the prime minister of this government that's made up of all Uzbeks and Tajiks and Hazaras and are determined on excluding the rest of the Pashtuns? I don't understand.
Well, because the CIA did a little bit of homework for a change, and they realized that they had to put a Pashtun as head of the government, because otherwise the Pashtun people would never have compromised or agreed with it, and they would certainly never have gone along with a Tajik or an Uzbek as the head of the government. So they found Karzai, who had been a consultant to U.S. oil companies. He was suave, he was an amiable chap, decent man, and CIA asset, like so many other rulers across the Muslim world. And he was put into power, he and his brother. And a couple of other, whenever you see these Afghans on American television speaking flawless English and wonderful shirts and ties, clean-shaven and everything else, well, these are the Afghans who were sent to American universities, and many of them were recruited by the American intelligence agencies to follow the American party line.
Mm-hmm. Well, now, I've read some reports about Wali Karzai, Hamid Karzai's brother, who you mentioned there. And they said that he actually is a pretty powerful warlord himself in Kandahar. But I wonder if that means that, or does that imply at all that he has any kind of real constituency there, or he's just been able to, through force of arms, be able to create himself that little pocket of power?
He's the boss Tweed of Kandahar, or he's the chief bagman there. He controls some of the police and some of the military units. So he's the man with the guns, but he doesn't control the region because it's Pashtun, it's Taliban heartland, but he sits atop of it as the government's overseer.
Mm-hmm. I'm Scott Horton. I'm helping Alan Minsky fill in for Ian Masters today on the show. I'm talking with Eric Margolis. He's the author of War at the Top of the World and American Raj. And now I want your assessment of this counterinsurgency strategy that the Center for New American Security, John Nagel and all these guys came up with. To, I guess they said, install a government in a box in Afghanistan. They're going to clear, hold, and build, just like would have worked fine in the Vietnam War if the liberals hadn't stabbed us in the back, Eric.
What a joke. When I first heard that government in a box, I couldn't believe it. We're not in the pizza delivery business in Afghanistan. The idea that they could package up a bunch of stooges and ship them into Kandahar and the people would respect them, so totally misreads the nature of the Afghans. You have to wonder, what in the hell are these people thinking?